All right, yeah, good morning. Jeff Warrock here at the National Weather Service office in Wakefield. Going to run through the weather for the rest of this week, taking us all the way through Sunday and probably just look a little bit into next week, which does look fairly quiet, but we'll kind of just get into it. As far as what's going on right now this morning, kind of a little bit of an interesting weather pattern here. Let me see if I can make that bigger for you guys. In the bigger picture, most folks have some sun. There's a few little clouds here over North Carolina, but you definitely notice over the Maryland Eastern Shore and Northern Virginia, quite a bit more low clouds and even some fog. And when I zoom in really, really tight up there, we get a little bit of a closer look. And I'm gonna see if I can put this in motion for you guys. You can actually see some of this fog and this northeast wind. It's a little bit of a backdoor cold front, and you can actually see it sneaking down the eastern shore here. So kind of pushing through Wallops Island, starting to make its way down into Accomack. A little bit of pushing down towards the Potomac, but you can definitely see the fog's kind of hanging up. But definitely see the fog back here in Northern Virginia. So definitely seeing the difference between the cooler air to the north there with that we call it a backdoor cold front kind of sneaking in from the northeast, where most of us really are fairly warm and sunny. And this backdoor front won't make it very far south. You can kind of see not much of just a slow push here, maybe across Northern Virginia into parts of Northern Neck, and it might sneak down just north of Richmond here as the day goes on. And with that little backdoor front, there could be a couple little isolated showers or maybe even a thunderstorm pop up along this little boundary, but it's showing up really good here on satellite this morning. And even if I look at some of the weather observations across the region, I'll just pull this up. Give it a chance to pull up here. You notice North Carolina down here across Hampton Roads, Southern Virginia, even Richmond. I mean, we're well into the 70s already with a good little, nice little warm southwest to south breeze. And those temperatures are going to continue to kind of warm up today. A lot of places in the 80s. But you come up here, and I'll zoom in a little bit tighter here up over Ocean City and Salisbury. Temperatures there only in the 50s. So, that's that northeast wind, coming in off the water with that cold water. And again, that front, you can kind of see how it's a north wind here at Wallops, and it kind of runs right, basically from Wallops right along the Potomac, like right where you saw that cloud deck. You can kind of see where the wind shift is. And so quite a bit cooler to the north. That is going to sneak south and going to make temperatures a little bit tricky today, especially areas I'd say just north of Richmond. We'll see how that plays out, but that backdoor front just kind of sitting just to our north. So that's what's happening there. We'll jump right into the kind of the weather maps here because I'll be able to see what's happening, with that front. So let me pull it down here. So this is this morning. You definitely see that front being analyzed there, coming through Maryland Eastern Shore and still pushing down across the Potomac, which is kind of where we are right now. This afternoon, push it in later this afternoon by about 2 o'clock. Front hasn't moved a whole lot. Like I said, it might sneak down into parts of Caroline County. It might get into a little bit of the northern neck, but it really kind of stalls out and just loses some of its push. So we'll see how much further south it makes it this morning. And again, along that front, you could see a few little isolated showers, maybe a thunderstorm pop up, and you'll see this a slight risk of a shower today in our northern parts of our forecast area, but not a whole lot to it. By the time you push into this evening, again, that front's still there. Notice how maybe it sagged a little bit further south, like we just said, maybe getting down to the Middle Peninsula, maybe not quite down to Williamsburg. But that front's just going to be kind of hanging out kind of over our northern area, kind of just being driven by that northeast wind with that cold marine air coming off the ocean. So it's just going to make this temperature boundary and probably a boundary for clouds. And like I said, maybe a few showers. Tonight, it does start to lift back to the north. By Friday, it's still there. Still kind of hung up over Maryland and Northern Virginia, so may kind of still mess with our weather for our friends at Maryland Eastern Shore. So could be a big difference in temperatures tomorrow morning for most of our forecast area being fairly mild and warm tomorrow morning, where the Maryland Eastern Shore may still be fairly cool because of that wind coming in off the ocean. By tomorrow evening, you do see that front's pretty much washed out with high pressure really in control offshore. So everybody gets into that southerly wind for Saturday, and that does persist. This is Saturday morning, so it persists really through the entire day on Saturday. Now, by Saturday, you do see this front starting to approach from the west. This is a pretty strong cold front, and by Sunday morning, it will be on our doorstep. So by Sunday morning, this cold front will be starting to make its way across the mountains, and that's going to increase our chances for showers and maybe even a thunderstorm or two with this front as it comes through on Sunday. And we'll talk about the timing of that here in a few minutes. You also notice it's kind of a 1-2 shot. We have this initial front that's going to be pushing through the area on Sunday, and you do see another cold front here coming down across the Great Lakes and part of the Midwest, kind of a secondary shot of cold air that's going to come in behind it. So that's going to give us some cooler temperatures as we get into next week. By Monday morning here, you see that second front has really blown through the area. We're going to have some cool air kind of pushing in here, which will drop temperatures a bit, just briefly, but it's going to drop temperatures a little bit as we get into early next week. And then looking much further into about Tuesday, you do see even another front coming down. That'll kind of keep our temperatures cool here for a little while. That's a pretty strong high pressure system with a decent shot of cool air on Tuesday of next week. Wednesday, high pressure's right in overhead. Probably going to be a fairly cool day next week. And then that high pressure is going to start to kind of move over us and offshore on Wednesday. So kind of a flip-flop with temperatures coming early next week with those fronts for everybody. So just kind of typical spring roller coaster ride with our temperatures. So we did talk about maybe a little bit of a risk of a thunderstorm or shower or two. And you kind of see here today, Storm Prediction Center has an area there where we could see a rumble of thunder. And I'd say that's probably mainly going to be north of Richmond, wherever that front stalls out. That's where we could see a little bit of shower activity, maybe a rumble of thunder. No severe risk. It's a very, very, very low probability. And so that's wouldn't be too concerned about that. And then Friday and Saturday, we're really not expecting much of anything. There's really no risk of thunderstorms, really, for the most part, either day. In fact, I'd say the risk today is pretty low. Again, here's the probabilities of precipitation for today. So very, very low. We're not even really putting much precip on the map. Anything that we get is going to be very isolated, and we stay very dry. Notice that, at least through Sunday morning, there's not much of a chance of rain. You do notice Goochland and some of the areas to the north, Louisa, even out, start to see a little bit of a small chance of rain there Sunday morning, but the better chance is really going to be later on in the afternoon. And we'll kind of hit on that here in just a second, which we'll talk about it right now, where what you're seeing here is this is now the precipitation really for Sunday. And kind of give you an idea here of the timing of it here on Sunday. I know there's a lot of activities and stuff planned, for later this weekend. And so it looks like the morning will be okay. I think we could see a few light isolated showers, especially in the west. You see Farmville here, Goochland, Louisa all have about a 35% chance of rain or so. So we're going to have to watch out for that. Bowling Green maybe at 25%. So early in the morning, I think things are going to be a little bit just to our west. There will be rain out there, but maybe just to the west for most of us. Now, I will say the models have sped up the front a little bit. So this timing could come a little bit earlier. We'll see if that trend continues, but things have sped up a little bit, meaning that it's bringing it in here a little bit faster. But you definitely see those rain chances really start to increase everywhere by about noon, especially by about 6 o'clock. So that's when things really kind of jump up. And so if I just look at the timing of the rainfall, and this is the 6 hourly forecast rainfall. So this is how much rainfall are you going to experience every 6 hours is kind of the best way to look at this. And so I kind of move it ahead in time. We're starting here at Friday evening. So you can tell it's dry. So there's nothing going on here Friday evening. Saturday's nothing really going on. Kind of keep on going through fast here. Here's Saturday evening at 8 p.m. Everything's to the west. Kind of stays to the west. Here's Sunday morning at 8 a.m. So this is the rainfall ending at 8 a.m. Sunday. So right now, this is kind of a model blend, kind of an average of the models. And it's showing you most of the area is dry with rain just to our west from the mountains west by about 8 a.m. But by the time you get to 2 p.m., you notice that rainfall kind of, jumps east pretty quickly. So, somewhere between probably, I'd say maybe 10 and noon, you're going to start to really, after 10 a.m., you're really going to start to see this some light rain pushing in from the west. And it's probably going to reach a lot of the I-95 corridor, I'd say probably by around noon. So the rainfall may start to kind of come in pretty quickly late morning and early afternoon, especially I'd say along 95 and west, even up here towards Cambridge. I think the rain may come in by around noon or so on Sunday. That's rainfall through 2 o'clock, but through 8 o'clock, you see the whole thing just continues to push east with the front. So our friends in Eastern Virginia, Southeast Virginia, Northeast North Carolina, you're going to be getting the rain in the afternoon. So it's going to start to push into there, right after 2 o'clock, probably by about 3 o'clock or so. 4 o'clock, you're going to start to see that rain pushing east. And it'll be a good little round of showers here. See, the models are spitting out some at least 6 hourly rainfall amounts, enough to get everything wet. So that's through 8 p.m. Sunday evening, and then it really starts to push offshore, after that. So it does move through pretty quickly. It's just going to get everybody on Sunday. And right now, it does look like on Sunday, everybody's going to see at least some rainfall. So, we're forecasting anywhere from, I'd say, a 1/4 inch of rain upwards to maybe a 1/2 inch of rain. And looking at some of the probabilities as far as, how wetting of a rain might this be. Of course, so this is through 8 a.m. Sunday. When we remember, we said nothing's really going on by then. And this is a 12-hour now accumulation total. So, and this is the probability of getting at least a 1/4 of an inch. So a good soaking rainfall, at least gets everything wet. And so you see, nothing really there. But the next 12 hours, which takes us to about Sunday at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you definitely see the probability of some decent rain reaching that I-95 corridor, even up here towards Cambridge, like you saw earlier. Friends in the west getting a good round of some good rainfall. But then for the rest of the day, this takes us through 8 p.m. And this is, a good sign. This means that, it looks like everybody should see at least a good wetting rainfall of at least a 1/4 of an inch or so. So this is good news. We need the rain. We need things to stay a little bit damp. We're still have some drought conditions out there. We're worried about fire conditions this time of year. So it looks like things will be a little bit, at least of a wetting rainfall. And then you see it pushes offshore by the time you get into Monday evening. All the decent rainfall does actually push to the east. If I bump this up a little bit, and I'm going to increase to the probability of a 1/2 inch of rainfall. And so if I change it here to which a chance you're going to get a 1/2 inch of rain, you can kind of see here the probabilities do decrease quite a bit. Some areas I think might get a 1/2 inch. I'll back it up. You got a good probability here in the west. The system's moving so quickly. Some places might get a 1/2 inch across central Virginia, but the probability is pretty low. Looks like there's a better probability of getting a 1/2 inch of rain, here over parts of the eastern shore, and really I'd say east and southeast of Richmond into Hampton Roads. We might be able to get a little bit more than a 1/4 of an inch, might be able to get close to a 1/2. And of course, that probability even increases a little bit more for northeast North Carolina and southeast Virginia as we get into the Sunday evening. So the good news is everybody really kind of gets in on some wetting rainfall, but it looks like the better chance for at least getting, more than a 1/4 inch of rain does look like it's going to be mainly east of I-95. So, and we could see a 1/2 inch of rain in some areas, especially over eastern shore and parts of southeast Virginia, northeast North Carolina. So, a little bit, we'll see how this plays out. Things could change, but that's kind of looking like how the rainfall is going to play out. And again, most of that really is targeted, again, more towards Sunday afternoon and Sunday evening. And things really should be ending pretty quickly as you get into Sunday night, especially by Monday morning, all the rain really should be over. So just a shot of rain ahead of that front, and right as that front comes through, might get a little bit of a shot of rainfall. So we did talk about the temperatures a little bit, and you can see things really warm here for the next couple of days. We got that front stalled out, so that northeast wind, so they're really affecting, places like Ocean City. You can see how much cooler the temperatures are there, just because that front is kind of stuck right over there. Same thing with Salisbury. They're quite a bit cooler today, but everybody else really pretty much in the 80s and upper 70s. So it's really going to be nice. Same thing with your overnight lows being very mild. But again, you get that 1-2 punch. That cold front comes through Sunday with that secondary cold front coming in Monday, and you see those high temperatures. They do actually fall off pretty good as we get into early next week. I mean, really kind of about normal, mostly in the 60s and some highs maybe only in the 50s even come Wednesday, and some pretty cool nights as you get into next week. So we get that 1-2 punch of cool air. It really does cool things off for the beginning and middle of next week. But then I can tell you right now, looking out past this, next weekend, temperatures could be right back in the 80s. This could be a really brief cool off here. Get a pretty cool shot of air middle of the week, maybe even some frost problems with temperatures getting in the mid to upper 30s. That might cause some issues with our growers. Frost advisories and things like that may be needed. But I tell you what, by next weekend, we're probably right back up into the 80s. We may rebound really fast. So this cool spell could be pretty brief. And again, looking at the long term for rainfall, the only chance for rain we really have it really is only really going to be about Sunday night, and then over by Monday. So really no chances of rain with those other fronts coming through. They're just cold shots of air. So we really do need some precipitation out of this system coming through Sunday to keep things a little bit wet, and to try to keep the fire danger down a little bit. So that's kind of good news. Hopefully we can get a good soaking rain out of this. Whoops, sorry. So they're looking at the drought status, the latest drought status there. A lot of the area still is in kind of in that D1, kind of considered that, moderate drought conditions. There is still some severe drought conditions, much more to our south and west, where it's been quite a bit drier. So they do need that big rain actually over the North Carolina mountains, in the Virginia mountains. They're actually in a more of a severe drought than what we are. So we've had some decent rainfall in part of our area, which has kind of worked some of the area out of the technical drought. But again, we're kind of on the edge. So we do need this rainfall to come through, here on Sunday and kind of keep things wet. We really do need that. Looking ahead, we just this is actually looking out to 8 to 14 days. So this is beyond that cold spell. Think about that. So we're going to have that cold spell the middle of next week, and that's going to be a good cold shot. But looking out past that, you can really see how the rest of the whole country really has a very strong signal for seeing above normal temperatures. And like I said, I think by next weekend, we're going to be back in the 80s again. So I do think there's a pretty good confidence that once we get through that cold spell, the middle of next week, temperatures are going to rebound and we're going to get into a pretty good warm spell. In fact, the entire country is next week. The bad news is also looking further out. You saw that the only chance of rain we really have is Sunday and Sunday night. And really, there's no more rain next week, really. And we're looking out beyond that. We're starting to look out for the next 2 weeks or so. It does look like there's some confidence that the precipitation will be below normal once we get past Sunday. So, that could mean increasing fire conditions. If we get hot, we get breezy, and if all these fine fuels dry out with all those hot temperatures, that could be meaning that, a week and a half, 2 weeks out, we may be having some fire issues. So just something to be aware of when you're getting this warm, and you have signals that you may see below normal precipitation, something we're going to have to watch in a couple of weeks to see how all that comes together. Looking at the marine side of the house, we do have some lighter wind conditions really today and even into tomorrow. So really, not much of a small craft advisory condition there, not much orange on the map. But you do see the winds pick up a little bit ahead of that front for Saturday. That's south winds, and that's kind of late in the day. Some of those south winds will start to pick up. And then with that front coming through, we may see some small craft advisory conditions. That's why you see so much orange on the map there on Sunday. And then you get that secondary shot of cool air coming in on Monday. So maybe some lingering small craft conditions on the bay, but the wind should be coming down as we push through today, Monday. And again, you see not a whole lot of, as far as any kind of strong wind, just a south wind at about 15 to 20 knot gust here, taking us all the way through Saturday. And those winds do increase a little bit there on Sunday as that front starts to approach from the west, and those south winds do start to pick up. The numbers you see here on the map are really how strong the wind gusts might be on Sunday. And kind of looking at the longer range, again, you see the winds are strongest here on Sunday, right ahead of that front. The front initially comes through, that first front on Sunday night, Monday morning. The winds aren't super strong, 15 knots, maybe gust about 20 knots, and then they kind of lay down a little bit here. And then you get that secondary surge of cool air here on Wednesday. And that's a decent little shot of cool air. And that's so we're seeing winds of about, 20, 25 knots, maybe even some gusts close to 30. And that's going to kind of reinforce that cooler weather for the middle of next week. But then beyond that, the winds do start to calm down, become south again. And again, temperatures warm right back up for next weekend. So no gale conditions expected. Just going to be a little bit breezy off and on the bay and the coastal waters. And so with the wave heights, anywhere from 3 to 5 feet, very, very typical, maybe a little bit higher as you get north of Cape Charles, start to running maybe into about 5 to 7 feet with that continuous kind of north to northeast wind up there, especially as those fronts come through. I'll see a little higher seas up in that area. And this is just showing you the significant wave height versus the maximum wave height. And this is really going to be geared towards when those fronts and stuff are coming through, where we may see some of the higher wave conditions. All right, I'll go ahead and stop the recording.